So I'm trying to figure out what is going on in the markets because the DAX is down over 2%. We're seeing worries coming through again from the Eurozone, but no specific reason as to why the markets are heavily down.
I think the general reason, it's more of a sentiment point of view at the moment. A lot of statistics have been released lately. They were all in line with expectations, as you've mentioned already today. However, they didn't exceed expectations. And I think from a sentiment perspective...
Are we getting fussy now, it seems?
I think investors are getting fussy. Investors are tremendously fussy. We always want it to go the right way, and we always want the markets to go up. And as soon as there's a little blip in the screen, we want to know why, what's actually happened, what has changed. Nothing fundamentally has changed. In general, the news flow is a lot better than where we were this time last year. Okay, and the markets have done tremendously well since October worldwide. I mean, we tend to forget American markets are up tremendously for this year already. I mean, in the first month, you know, that increase is usually what we would get in a full year. So to have a bit of profit taking at the moment is not unexpected at all. And I think it's in line with the current conditions economically worldwide. We are again concerned about Europe. We are again concerned about Spain and Portugal, and we're concerned about America, that it's not growing fast enough and the jobs aren't being created fast enough. And we're concerned again about India and China, that the growth is not strong enough. So
there's a lot of worry, you know, on the shoulders of the investors out there, I must say.
I think, you know, it's still very fresh in the minds of investors, the 2008 liquidity crisis that we had and the recent crisis that we had in Greece at the moment with the sovereign debt. So there's this dark cloud hanging over everyone's head, and it tends to brighten for a few months, and then we get extra statistics that aren't as good as expected, and again, you know, it's another opportunity to sell. So that's what we've seen. We've basically seen a move out of risk, all right, so emerging markets and stock exchanges in general, into less risky assets, American government bonds. If you've seen the American bond yields move from about 2.25%, closer to 2% at the moment. We've already seen the euro weaken, we've seen the dollar strengthen, we've seen the rand weaken. So people are moving their money into government bonds in America and into the American currency at the moment.
Okay, so I've been looking for bad news, and here's a piece of bad news.
Okay, you found something.
I've found something. So we saw UK house prices suffering the worst monthly fall in 2 years, which is a 1% seasonally adjusted fall in house prices. The last time we saw this was in 2010, and most people were expecting a rise of 0.3%. So there we go.
So there we go. So that's the reason. World markets are down because prices in the UK aren't looking so good. So.
Okay, so I mean, with South Africa, the truth is we've seen how many new record highs into this year. It's been quite phenomenal to see the JSE just hitting new record levels. Yeah,
34,800 or whatever Absolutely. It was. Look, I mean, the JSE's been trading in a bit of a band at the moment. I mean, we tend to forget that it's not down by that much. I think the lows today were 33,300. That's technically a good support indication. And we did rally a little bit at the end of it. I see the top 40 closing down about 0.5%. So it wasn't too much of a bad day in South Africa, and I think the main reason for that is that you know, the rand is starting to weaken now, and that's giving a little bit of support to some of the resource shares. Even though the platinum shares were down heavily at the moment, Billiton managed to actually close positive, which has a massive effect on the top 40. Yeah. You know, having a look at...
But I mean, the top 40, I mean, you see Aspen is at the top of the top 40, Vodacom as well, True
Aspen's been doing very well. That's climbing up a higher...
So it's still the industrial sector that's
Correct.
Dominating
oh, absolutely.
the gainers, even the last 2 days, in fact.
If you look at the resources, they're still way below their all-time highs, you know. The industrials and the financials have really come to the fore at the moment, specifically the retailers as well. Aspen's doing tremendously well as of late, up to all-time highs almost on a daily basis. So it's very interesting to see the growth projections out in Australia and other parts of the world doing very, very well for them. And I think a lot of foreign buying interest in Aspen still at the moment. Again, it's a defensive share to buy in times of uncertainty. You probably see Raynet up and British American Tobacco up as well.
Why are people buying such expensive stocks? The industrial sector is overall looking quite expensive.
It is a tough pill to swallow. Here we go.
See Tiger Brands is up. Also, Raynet Investments, as you mentioned,
correct. Vodacom as well, also quite heavy at the moment at those kind of levels. I mean, you can look at South African breweries, Richemont, Naspers,
and if you look was actually quite up yesterday.
Correct. So I mean, if you look at their PE ratios, you know, they're anything from 20 to 35, and everybody's saying, look, anything over 10 is expensive. It's all relative in what you're investing in at the end of the day. So it's not really something to go on. If you want to be in a business that's growing, and Aspen is certainly something that you could have a future look at, the expansion phase there, then, you know, 118 is not that much to pay if you've got a 10-year view. If you're very short-term minded and you have like a 2-week view on where we're going, I wouldn't touch Aspen, for example. So it's generally relative.
All right, so let's touch on the resource space. I've heard from so many people that resource is looking attractive, BHP Billiton, Anglo American, looking attractive, and these are the companies that are just not meeting expectations.
I was actually mentioning it this morning in a meeting. You could have bought Billiton in April 2010 for the current price it just closed at. You know, what happened in the last 2 years? It went up to 260, it went down to 200, now it's back up to 230. It just can't seem to make its mind up. And that's generally the investor, theory in the world at the moment.
I mean, Anglo-American is sitting at 286.
Yes.
It was at
it was at 350, 360 just the other day.
Just the other day,
so
absolutely.
it's quite scary, actually, how these movements occur. It's really a point of sentiment. If you're worried about world growth, as we are right now today, your international diversified miners will take the brunt of the knock. However, if you take Kumba and Exxaro, they are down today. However, they've done tremendously better than a Billiton and an Anglos because they tend to fly a little bit under the radar. They're not diversified, so they don't have that general view of being completely susceptible to a downturn in world growth at the moment. But to answer your question, I think from a longer term perspective, if you're really looking for value, there's certainly value in the resource sector.
But I've been hearing this for quite some time, and we're just not seeing this materializing. Is it just a real big fear about China?
Well, you're pointing out Anglos and Billiton specifically. If you have been buying Exxaro, Kumba and Sasol, you've actually done fairly well. So you have to pick correctly.
But Sasol is still below 400. It hit 400, didn't sustain 400. It's sitting at 368.
It's a pretty good first-time buy in my opinion. So if you don't have Sasol on your portfolio and you want to add to it, if you're underweight, think about it. You're buying a share that's cum dividend. They've got their dividend policy back now. So you're looking at about 4.5% to 5% going forward, which is higher than cash in the bank. Yes, that will be taxable eventually, but the point is that the oil price is still at about $120 to $125 per barrel. The rand's at 770. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that Sasol's really coining it. They're expanding offshore. There's less interest in South Africa. So, 415 rand, results were released. There were a few issues there, so that's why we've seen a bit of a pullback at the moment. At 368, I think you're getting a stellar buying opportunity.
Very quickly, construction, is that a stellar buying opportunity?
No, not at all. I'm completely not anti-construction, but I'm against the curve at the moment. I think the value is there, but I don't think it's there yet.